Welcome to Rick Scale Model Fix and a brand new video build. This time I'm going to take you through the build of Airfix's brand new 1/48 scale Airfix Sabre F4. There's already a review of this kit up on the channel, so if you want to take a look at that before we start the build, it'll bring you up to speed with what's contained in the box. So without further ado, let's get to the cutting mat and get some plastic off those sprues. So with any new build, when you start, it's always worth having a look through the instruction booklet. Just get familiar with the build sequence and see if there's anything that you think you could do better or to speed the build up or make it easier. So looking at stage one, we're looking at joining the intakes with the cockpit. Pretty standard way of doing things for Sabres. And then as we look through the instruction book, we're going to choose some options. So we're going to have the ammo bay closed on this model, so we'll be skipping past some of this. So I've already removed some of the parts from the sprue for the intake and the cockpit tub, and straight away we'll notice in the intake some quite severe ejector pins. Not a problem if you're going to be using the supplied FOD guards, but some of them are quite close to the intake opening and therefore elected to sand these out, which we've done on the upper part. So to do that, this is where the Flory Models skinny sanders come into their own, and we're just going to start off with a coarse white core one, and we're just going to work the plastic gently just to remove any trace of the ejector pin circle, like so. The ejector pins are bugbear of most modelers, but in all reality they only take a few minutes just to clear up. Depending on how deep or severe they are, they can be a pain if they're on internal structure such as undercarriage doors and things, where you've got to work at it a little bit more without ruining any detail. But on this intake it's quite straightforward, and as you can see, within a couple of seconds, 30 seconds or so, they've gone. So this is going to be aluminium, so we just need to get rid of some of the more deeper scratches that the coarse sanding stick caused. So we're just basically making the plastic nice and smooth, ready for the metal finish. And then the fine sponge one, just to polish up the plastic. All remains of those ejector pin marks have gone. The Airfix plastic does sort of help in that process, with it being quite soft. And as you can see, as we join these together, we've got a slight fit issue. The parts are twisted. Put some clamps on, we'll sort that, no problem. So we're just looking at this mating surface, and it is a bit rough and there's a big mould seam there. So we're just going to give that a quick sand, just so that it doesn't interfere with the fit of the intake ring later. So we'll need to pull that across. So we'll get that painted up. Stage 3 looks at the construction of the ejector seat, and it does look quite basic. It wasn't an advanced type in the Sabre at all, and it's interesting to note that Airfix do include 2 seats, hinting at further examples of this kit or versions of this kit to be released sometime in the future. Instrument panel is with a decal, so we'll have a look at that. So we'll have a look at this seat and see what it builds up like. So we want these seat parts, so we'll snip these off. Just using a pair of side cutters like so. And then we'll get on. So we've got more ejector pin marks. These are quite raised, and they're going to interfere with the fit of the seat and look unsightly as they're on the inside, so they're going to need removing. So exactly the same process as we did with the intake. And these parts are devoid of any detail whatsoever, and and they look really crude and basic. So we'll see what this looks, what it looks like built up. It might be that I jump on the internet and order a resin one online. As with most jets, the ejector seat is the first thing anybody looks at when they're looking in the cockpit of the model, especially if it's on display at a model show or anything like that. So again, just removing the worst of that ejector pin and cleaning the rest of it. Do the other side as well. The seat cushion, it's got a little bit more detail to it. I'll just clean those up gently. Before gluing the parts together. Nice strong and bold location points there for the seats. No chance of getting those in the wrong way round or anything like that. So there's the finished seat, and it is quite crude and basic. Next stage of the instructions looks at D8, the instrument panel, which is painted black and a decal applied. So we can have a look at D8. So there is a little bit of raised detail on there. It's not brilliant. It'll do. Probably look okay with that decal on. With the decals being cartograph, I imagine they'll fit quite nicely on there with a bit of setting solution. So it might be not a bad look at the end. So we'll set that aside for painting, and then we've got the control column, which is broken down into two parts, C13 and C14. These are just going to come together with some cement. The fit's not terribly brilliant. But what we'll do is we'll close the gap there and then sand that smooth at the bottom, and again we'll put that with the items to be painted. So the remainder of the first page of the instruction book sees that all coming together, so I'll set ahead and paint all that. And then we're looking at turning the page. So again, we're looking at things that we can paint at the same time as the previous assemblies. So we've got the intake and bullet there, which is all in aluminium, so we can glue those together and get ready to do that. So this part is covered in that strange blue substance again. I'm just going to assume it's some sort of mould release agent. So we'll just remove the attachment points. That's quite a substantial mould tab. And then we'll just give this a clean up. As it's fitted between the fuselage sides, it could, if you don't clean any of the burring or sort of sprue attachment points completely, it'll force the fuselage out, and then you'll end up with a seam that you need to fill later in the build. So a few seconds with a sanding stick, sanding sponge will pay dividends later. And then we've got these two sections which are parts C8 and C9. Again, just making sure that there's no remnants of the sprue attachment points. Offer these up together to see what the fit's like. It's reasonable, but not brilliant, and it looks as though it's that end that's being forced out, so we're just going to reduce the height a little bit at this end. So wanting to push that away, so I think I'll remove that altogether. And there's a perfect fit. So going to our Tamiya quick set extra thin, we're just going to put some along that on that joint. Squeeze those together to complete that. We have got a seam there, so we'll quickly fill that with some Mr. Surfacer or even Tamiya putty, and then this goes into the key on the reverse side, and the fit is horrendous. Now much better. So just getting some Tamiya filler, and a cocktail stick, and we're just going to work that into the joint. Can put that aside to dry, and I think what I'll do with these before I spray the lot, I think I'm going to take these down to the kitchen and give them a wash in some warm soapy water. So while the filler dries on parts C8 and C9 before I glue it to B21, I'm just going to work on the next section. So in step 12, as you can see here, we've got that FOD guard that goes in now if you wish to use it, and then the intake ring. I think I'm probably going to leave this until we join the fuselage halves together, just to make sure that the joint is really good. We're going to skip the pilot, so it's on now with the nose gear bay, so we want parts B36 and B35. These are going to be installed like so. Building up that nose gear wheel well bay. So just make sure we get it all seated. And we've got another gap at the back there. And just before that glue dry, I'm just going to give that a quick whiz. My sanding stick, just to make sure it is all the same height, and then I'm just going to put a real amount of glue around that. The last thing we want is that breaking free. So as I said at the beginning, for this model, the ammunition bays at the fuselage sides, I'm going to put them in the closed position. So we've got a bit of information that we need to read here. So it says, if assembling this model with the gun doors closed, follow steps 15 and 16 below. And then miss out steps 17 to 32 on pages 5 and 6. And go to step 33 on page 7. So with A1 removed from the sprue, we can see that we've got the aperture there for B5. So we've got the parts B5 and the fuselage half, and we're just going to see if these fit nicely. So I'd expect it to come along and close that up quite nicely. Let's get it the right way around. It doesn't want to even go in. It doesn't even want to sit flush with the fuselage. The fit of that panel is horrendous. So again, just making sure that we have got it flush at the back. It's horrendous. There's a massive step all the way around it, and that's going to need considerable amount of work to get that to sit flush. So after quite a bit of work, I've managed to get that panel in the fuselage closed. The panel lines are a little bit rough at the moment, but that's not a problem. We'll sharpen those up with a scribing tool when the plastic's fully hardened. If you try and scribe that now, it'll just tear. Pleased to say that the drop-in panel on the fuselage was a really nice fit. Didn't need much more than just a swipe with a sanding stick just to blend that in. And we're going to have the air brakes open, so the open air brake bay fits perfectly as well, and that's just held inside with some super glue. And the lower part of the cannon weaponry bay fitted again, but needed teasing. So quite a bit of work on that port side. Funny enough, when I started working on the starboard side, the parts were a lot better fit, and as we can see with the insert, it just drops straight in and is a really good fit. So I'm just wondering whether there was something that I'd perhaps missed that was fouling the fit on the other part, or whether it was just one of those funny things, one side fits where the other doesn't. So we'll put the drop-in panel back in on this side as well with the different vents and the speed brake bay. So we're getting close to breaking out the airbrush for the first time with the model, and what we did is we just give it a quick prime just to seam check and see what the final results are like. Like I said, we'll need to run a scribe around that to sharpen those panel details up once the plastic's fully dried. So I've been busy just off camera, and we've dry fitted the fuselage, and the fit is not good. So it takes quite a bit of time to find the correct fit of the fuselage with all the internal parts added. And it's quite challenging, it's warped, as you can see there. It really doesn't want to go together. So this kit is turning into something that's not really quite nice. Taking a lot of time to get the build together. It's quite finicky. So as you can see from the internals, now we've glued the ducting together and secured the cockpit tub, and that's been fitted in. Quite good location points in there. And we've built up the exhaust, painted that dark iron, and again that's just been held in place with a bit of super glue at the back, so everything fits there. Cockpit tub is basic. It's relying on decals that don't really look like instruments. I've seen better from Eschi kits back in the day, and the kit isn't cheap, and I'm just beginning to get the feeling with this, it's just a little bit out of the competition in terms of likes of the Academy kit and Hasegawa kit, if you can get hold of it. Same sort of price bracket as the Academy kit. Having built the Academy kit, I'm erring on the fact that so far I think the Academy kit would be a better option for a more detailed sabre. So we need to get this together, and again, like we said, it doesn't really want to go, so we're going to have a look at how best to approach this. And we've still got some inserts to fit in there as well, so the fit of this fuselage has got to be pretty good, otherwise it's going to affect the fit of the spine for the tail and these drop-in panels. So I've started joining the fuselage together, and this part of the windscreen seemed to be a particularly troublesome fit, so I've just worked some super glue onto the inside seam and got that stuck together. The fit round the undercarriage bay is nice, so what we'll do is, just to add a bit of security there, we're just going to add some liquid poly just to these parts, just to hold everything in situ. And then we're going to bind some tape around this. And this is just to hold everything in place. Obviously it's critical that this is all lined up, otherwise it will affect the fit of the canopy and the intake ring. So it seems to all want to go wrong at the back end. So I think what we'll do is we'll work with this seam first, and we're just going to push that down. And it's actually not too bad once you get it together. And we're just going to add some super glue on the inside. I'm just thinking of the best way. So I think what we'll do is we'll glue this section first and get this held in place. And then we'll pull this side in. So that's actually not too bad a fit there. Once we get the fit, again using some masking tape just to pull everything tight and hold it in place, and then you can just squeeze the alignment together. So we added part B16, which actually makes the roof of the jet exhaust, and again that's going to need some filler. We'll put a crocodile clip on there, I think, just to hold that one. And we'll bring the fin together. Close peg on this one. Probably not strong enough. Another crocodile clip. the end as well. So everything's holding up so far. So we're just going to put a piece of tape around the back. That holds that. And that just leaves us with this seam. Yeah, which looks quite frightening. So if we start by teasing this section in, I just think we're going to put a bit of super glue on the inside of that and just hold that. I think we're going to have some serious amount of seam clean up. And at the rear end, bit of kicker. Just waiting for that to go off. And we have got a nasty step there. That's going to take some cleaning up. And there we go, we've got the fuselage together. It's going to be some work. This seam, there's quite a pronounced step there, but luckily for us there's only a couple of panel lines there and we can sand that pretty much straight away. And with it being Airfix plastic, it's nice and soft and responds well to this sort of treatment. So with it being super glued in place, you can just work that, and already the step's pretty much eliminated. So we just don't want to put a flat spot on the fuselage, so we'll turn over. Now we've taken the majority of it away, and we'll just polish it up with a sponge, and that seems more or less done. So we'll add some liquid cement to the seam just on the outside now to make sure it doesn't open. We're working on the remainder of the kit. So we have the separate spine, so we'll just try this quickly just to make sure that nothing is massively out, and hopefully that'll just drop in. So again, we're going to need some force just to get it to line up, but actually fortunately the fit isn't too bad, as you can see there. So I'm going to leave this now to fully harden and dry. That concludes part 1 of Airfix's 148 Sabre build. So please join me again soon in the next part, where we'll have a look at tidying these seams up and getting the wings on. So until next time, everyone, please look after yourselves, stay well and take care.